But what I want to point out is that your current identity, it's not you. It's who you have been indoctrinated to be. Once you come to know that, not to think that, not to ponder that, not to even believe it, but once you know that at a core level, in that moment, you become unlimited. You literally program yourself. What you program yourself with is what you become. Remember this, we speak our lives into existence. But when you come to know yourself, that second, and that very second is when you become. You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is part of a series, and it's titled Being a Zero Limit Person. In this series, I'm not sure how many episodes it will be, but what I want to do is lay down some simple foundational thought paradigms to get you to start thinking in a new way so that you do become what you truly are, which is a zero limit person. So if you'd like to become a zero limit person, keep listening. To become a zero limit person, this requires, plain and simple, you know yourself. When you heard that title, being a zero limit person, I want to point out is that you heard that from your current identity. And if I ask you right now, who are you? What would you tell me? I am Bob, I am Susan, I am Megan, I am, this person, I am that person, I am Russian, I'm Australian, I'm Bolivian, I'm Venezuelan, I'm white, I'm male, I'm female, whatever it is. Some of that is factual, meaning your gender, but for the most part, it's all interpretation. And then the indoctrination you've learned as a result of being born in a particular culture. But what I want to share with you is I said that you heard about being a zero limit person from your current identity. And that identity could have said, no, I can't. There's no way. We have all these limitations, et cetera, et cetera. But what I want to point out is that your current identity, it's not you. And I just alluded to this. It's who you have been indoctrinated to be. And you've been indoctrinated to be whoever you are, and you continue to allow it because of a lack of higher awareness. And that higher awareness, quite literally, is that you are a zero limit person. But the reason that many of you find and believe and think that you have limits is because there's that operative word, person. You're living from the identity, an indoctrinated identity of a person that you have become, and that person that you have become, that identity, you've heard me talk a lot about the identity illusion, the identity that you are is all been indoctrinated. It's all made up. The truth is, the higher aspect of you, which is you, has zero limits. You've learned your limits, and what I want to start doing in this series, keeping it really simple, because see, what a lot of you guys want is you want to consume content. You're a voracious consumer of podcasts and books and videos and all these kind of things. And I think it was Bruce Lee who said, I would rather practice one kick 10,000 times than learn 10,000 kicks and practice it once. I'm sure I messed that up, but it's something like that. I could lay all these out for you, all the episodes in one episode and lay them all out. But for those of you guys that are the good students and the consumer, you'll blow right through it and miss pretty much every single bit of it. I remember a guy one time a couple of years ago, back when we had about 250 episodes. He said, Jim, I literally locked myself into a room, well, metaphorically speaking, and I listened to all of your episodes in the matter of about a week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it was. The guy completely missed the point. His identity was that of seeing himself as a consumer, as a learner. But what his identity was not was about absorbing and then literally taking what I'm sharing with you in the podcast and making it part of your human experience, making it part of who you are. And that's what I want to do with this particular series, is share these no limit perspectives with you and then give you a week between each episode to start integrating and bringing these things into your life. So all the following episodes in this particular topic will be similar to this one, but I have to lay a little more foundation in this particular episode. A question for you, think about that. What if you were truly a zero limit person? What would you be in life? What would you do? And what would you have? Now, I recall talking maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes ago, and I've mentioned this a few times. If we were near the ocean and I went out into the ocean with a little eyedropper and I pulled out one drop of water out of the ocean, that ocean water and that dropper is of the same chemicals and consistency of the entire ocean. When you incarnated into this body, guess what? You incarnated from the whole, but the body is like the dropper. The body is still the entire, it's the consistency of the entire ocean. Your body is the consistency of cosmology, all the universes and everything in the universes. So if the universe has no limits, and you're the dropper, that's still a representation of the ocean, metaphorically speaking. That means you have no limits, but you have the limits because you've come to know yourself. You've forgotten who you are and what you are, and you've come to know yourself from and with the indoctrination of other human beings. And then what you've done is you've learned to identify with that indoctrination. Now, I've said this in the podcast before. Let's say that you were born in Israel. Well, chances are, probability, you would be Jewish. But let's say that you were born in Cairo, Egypt. Chances, probability is that you would be Islamic. Culture literally indoctrinates you, and then you identify with that indoctrination, and that identification becomes your limitation. And what it's truly stripped away from you is the realization, again, back to the dropper of water, that you are as powerful as the all because you are from the all. You are part of the all. Like that one little drop of water is the same in part of the ocean, even though it's been separated. When you incarnated, you got separated from the all. Then you forgot that you were part of the all. Then you were indoctrinated, and you forgot every bit of who and what you really are, which is truly a being with zero limits. So what I'm attempting to do here is, over the course of the next several weeks, is to help you start understanding yourself as cosmic, infinite, and eternal energy. Because see, even you listening to me right now, you're listening from the energy container of your physical being. That is your container. But you, and you've heard me say this before, live inside the container. And once the container dies, and it will, like this container is Jim Fortin, once the container dies, the energy lives on, and that energy literally has zero limits. So you have to start knowing yourself, something I'll talk about later in this episode. You have to start knowing yourself, and I've said it before, know yourself as soul. Because when you know yourself as soul, you then have zero limits. What I'm going to share with you, I put it into my own words, but I've learned all of this over my past 28 years working with Don Javier. And he said it to me in different ways, different places in the world, at different times. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to distill it down to very simple phrases. Now, if you've listened for any amount of time, and if you haven't, go back to episode number 1 and start over. Even if you've listened for a year, but you've never gone back to the beginning, go back to the beginning and start over. Why? You'll find value there. But you've heard me talk about Don Javier, and he is a sorcerer. And he's constantly talking about sorcery, how everything comes from source. Now let's go back to the metaphor, the dropper of water. The ocean on planet Earth came from source. and the ocean is massive. And then you take that eyedropper and you don't really recognize it and identify the little, 3 or 4 drops of water in the dropper as the same thing as the source where it came from. But as I said 3 times now, what's in the dropper is the same thing that's in the ocean. They are both from the same source. And because I'm telling you this is a fact, because source is unlimited, you are unlimited. So your first declaration, your first new awareness, but write this down. And this is something that you're going to want to work with every single day this week. And that is a simple phrase, 4 words. This is the truth of you. I am unlimited source. Once you come to know that, not to think that, not to ponder that, not to even believe it, but once you know that at a core level, in that moment, you become unlimited. Why? Because you start shedding, like taking off your dirty clothes. You start shedding all the indoctrination that you've had for decades of your life. And you immediately, the first place you go. So for example, right now, if I ask you, boom, really quickly, what's your name? You say it in a second. Bob, Susie, Mary, Joe, whatever it is. You say it because you know it, because you've lived it your entire life. So when you come to know that you're unlimited source, you start going through your life like that. And when you start going through your life like that, let me ask you about going through your life. How would your life be different if you believed and you knew that you were unlimited source? Think about that for a moment. How would you be different? What would you do different? What would you create different if you worked from that point of knowing that you are unlimited source? But see, here's where most people shoot themselves in the foot. The biggest mistake people make, which is why they don't hit their goals, they don't achieve what they want in life, is most people work from point A to point B. And they will say, okay, I am here in life at point A, but I want to go to point B. But they work from point A to get to point B, and they never get to point B because they're working from point A. So if you're working from human identity, you're never going to get to understanding that you literally have 0 limits. You have to work from point B, and point B, let's say you want to go to point B, we just talked about that, but you don't start from point A. You start from point B. How would I be if I started from point B? You've heard me talk about be, do, have. How would I be if I start from point B? But how do you be when you start from point A? When you start from point A, you're like, metaphorically, okay, I got a mountain to climb. I have all these things I have to do, and it's going to be hard. And I need education, and I need this, and I need that. I need money, and I need resources, and I need a boyfriend, I need a girlfriend, I need a husband, I need a wife, I need kids, I need a home, all these kind of things, because you want to create more in life, which is at point B, but you start at point A. So if you're wanting to be a no-limit person, you can't start from the indoctrinated identity of your human identity. You have to start from point B, and point B is I am unlimited source. Everything is from source. Now, you might have a different word. You could call it the quantum dimension, the quantum field, the universe, God, whatever you want. But everything comes from the one source. There's no way around that. Even if, and scientists speculate, Don Javier's told me that we live in a multiverse. We think the universe we're in, which houses the Milky Way galaxy, is the only universe. He's told me there are universes upon universes upon universes upon universes called the multiverse. But here's the thing. All the multiverses are still from the one source, even though we don't even have any awareness of, let's say, 4 multiverses over, so to speak, like you're traveling, down the street 4 blocks over, four universes over. We don't even know that it exists, but it exists in the multiverse. But the multiverse is still from the one source. And we're from that one source, and we have to know ourselves as that one source. There is the power. You are the source. Notice what your human identity does with it. Click, I'm done with this episode. I'm not listening to this bullshit. Or, wow, this is way out there. Or, that's kind of weird. Or, this is amazing. It's amazing I finally hear it in this kind of way. Or, this is woo-woo. Whatever you're thinking right now is a reflection of your indoctrination. Now, your indoctrination comes from the source, but you have free will, and the source allows you to be indoctrinated in any way that happens to you, in any way that you choose. But everything, even the indoctrination, comes from source. And as I was alluding to earlier, Don Javier, he is a shaman, a babalao, a sorcerer, and he's often said, I'm a sorcerer. And not because I'm anything special or any of that, but he said, I get all of my knowing, all of my information, all of my data, everything that I need, I get from source. I remember him saying many years ago that a spiritual man, woman, person, a spiritual man needs nothing from no one. And I mentioned that on the podcast because when he said that, I remember the year and I remember where I was. It was so impactful for me when he said it. But I recognized is that he doesn't look to people for things. He looks to source because the source will bring the money. The source will bring the healing. The source will bring the people. Whatever it is that you want, it doesn't matter. It doesn't come from the hospital. It doesn't come from the doctor. It doesn't come from the Federal Reserve. It doesn't come from the earth. It doesn't come from Russia. It wasn't made in China. It wasn't made in Japan or Taiwan or Bolivia or the avocados from Mexico. Everything comes from source, including you. So if everything comes from source, wouldn't you want to know yourself as that ultimate power? Which source is. I did a podcast on that, 5, 6, 8, 10 weeks ago. And I think the podcast was titled, You're the Ultimate Power in the Universe. The reason you're the ultimate power is because you are source. So a question that I ask myself when I'm up against an obstacle, somewhere where I'm like, okay, what is my next step? And this is what inspired this entire series, because this is where I am in my life right now. I'm in a place right now, professionally, where I'm like, okay, what do I want to do next? And how do I want to do it? With the podcast, with my transformation programs, with everything that I do. What do I want to do next? Now, I can sit here and I can work from the indoctrinated Jim. I've got over 30 years of marketing experience and persuasion and influence and sales and training and transformation and shaman, got all this stuff. And I can work from there, or I can ask what I call divine mind. But here's a question that I've been asking myself. How can I choose to exercise my unlimited nature in this situation? Because I know I'm unlimited. And I know that. I know that I'm unlimited. But if I'm stuck somewhere, we're never stuck, we're only out of creativity. But if I'm stuck somewhere, I've hit a plateau, source has the answer. And source has no limits. So there are no limits, and people have actually said, you've heard over the decades, the sky's the limit. Well, no, the sky's not the limit. There are no limits, okay? But where I'm working from is how can I choose to exercise my, here's the operative words, unlimited nature in this situation or circumstance. So for right now, I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, There's a whole lot of marketing noise in the world that's mind-numbing. We recently got off from Facebook and moved all of my programs over to the app. And since we moved everything over to the app, I have not gone on the Facebook. To me, it's a toxic wasteland for the most part. Political mumbo jumbo, misinformation, bullshit, agendas, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm looking at, okay, as I'm watching the world in chaos and change, how do I change? How do I get ahead of the curve? What do I want to be doing to get ahead of the curve? And in what ways do I want to be doing it? Now, a lot of people are using AI, and we use it as well, but not to the extent of other people and more than a lot of people. And I'm thinking about, well, when it comes to ancient wisdom that I talk about, how do I want to integrate that with AI so people can actually learn the ancient wisdom quicker? So these are all things that I'm exploring right now, but I'm going from the platform of how can I choose to exercise my unlimited nature in this situation slash circumstance? Because as I said, I already know I'm unlimited. All that matters is how I choose to live that and to demonstrate that, because that comes from no limits. And then when we have that awareness that you have zero limits, I want to slow down here. That awareness, when it comes to be a knowing and you know it, that is power. Your being is power because, as I said earlier and said before, you are source. And to think anything differently than that is not to know yourself. To think that you are not all powerful, all knowing, all seeing means you don't know yourself. Because you are that, because you're source. Fourth time, dropper of water. You're that drop of water out of the ocean. But you have to come to know yourself as that, and that's when you become a zero limit person. So what I want to look at here is you are on the planet, your brain functions separately from the mind, but your brain functions and you learn through repetition. You literally program through neural pathways via and having your thoughts. You literally program yourself. When you think things over and over and over again, you create neural pathways, which create your habits. Your habits are your thought processes and your behavioral processes. And then this is in self-indoctrination, self-suggestion, auto-suggestion. What you program yourself with is what you become. Remember this, we speak our lives into existence. And somebody that was phenomenal at this, no longer on the planet, was Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali used to say, and I watched him box as a kid. I used to be a big fan when I was a kid watching boxing back in the 70s. And Muhammad Ali used to say, I'm the greatest fighter who ever lived. I'm the greatest fighter who ever lived. I'm the greatest fighter who ever lived. But he didn't just say it. He embodied it emotionally. And when he embodied it emotionally, he started creating neural pathways in the brain. And this became a belief of his. And this is what he knew, or he thought that he knew. Why? Because he had ingrained it through the repetition of, I am the greatest fighter who ever lived. But see, what a lot of people don't recognize, they get scoffed at this. But this is exactly why you scoffed at it. Because you've learned through indoctrination and your model of reality what you can scoff at and what is not to be scoffed at, which is relevant to your belief systems. But it's all indoctrination. You've learned it all. You've learned it through repetition. You've learned it from mom and dad. You've learned it from TV. You've learned it from school. You've learned. And all this indoctrination has hidden you from who you are. And what we have to do is actually help you recover. Remember the old you. And that old you that you're remembering, that eternal you, is this: unlimited source. We have listeners, I think it's like from 47 different countries. I'm speculating at least 25 or 30, different countries will be tuning in, and not the whole country, of course, but different people who live in these parts of the world. But it doesn't matter what I'm saying and what language you might be your native language, whether it be Dutch, English, Spanish, French, German, Russian, China. It doesn't matter. We're all from the same source. So what you want to start doing, your self-talk, you want to start talking to yourself about this one simple phrase: I am unlimited source. And then what you want to do 3 times per day, morning and when you wake up, lunchtime, and in the evening before you go to bed, just sit with it and get emotional with it, meaning come to know it, come to feel it, come to explore it. Don't just sit here analytically. Now, you might not be watching video, listening to the podcast, but I'm sitting up all like student-like, okay, I am unlimited. No, it's not that. It's coming to feel the truism. And if you need to go back for the 5th time now to the dropper and the ocean and the entirety of the ocean, that's you. You are a reflection of unlimited source. And being that reflection, because we live in a holographic universe, being that reflection, you have the power of the all. And the holographic universe means, and Don Javier and I talked about this, but hang on. I read a book back in the 90s called The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. And I'm in 1996, I believe, is when I started thinking about the universe being holographic. So 29 years ago. But Don Javier and I were talking a couple of days ago, many different things, family things, cars, guy things, fun things, living in Sedona, business. And he said, which he said many times before, and we've talked about it, we live in a holographic universe. And what that means is the most minuscule part of the universe is a reflection of the most macro part of the universe, and vice versa. We live in a hologram, the holographic universe. So I know that, and hopefully you can come to know that. And when you know that, you know yourself as soul. And your transformational takeaway is when you know yourself as soul, in that moment is when you become a zero limit person. Zero limit being, zero limit person, whatever you want to call it. But when you come to know yourself as the droplet of water is to the whole of the ocean, as is your physical body to the whole of creation. When you come to know that and explore that and embody that, that second, and that very second is when you become a zero limit person. Coaching on the podcast and the episodes. If that is you, simply go to my app. It would be app.jimfortin.com and join my Be Do Have Insiders. There, you have direct access to me when I'm doing live calls twice per month. I'm in there every single week. We do a podcast Q&A in there. I do coaching on that as well. And you can interact with me, and I can answer any and all questions you have about any episode here on the podcast, this one or any other. So what you want to do is go to app.jimfortin.com, join at least the free part of the podcast. And if you want to interact with me, then actually join the Be Do Have Insiders. So your transformational takeaway, 3rd time, just a reminder, is I am unlimited source. Come to know it, and you become a zero limit person. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you over on another episode. Bye-bye.